Never split labor and materials. The customer doesn't want to know.
You shouldn't be closing every job. Most guys think that if they just get more work, all their problems are going to be solved. But that's really the last thing they need.
The first time I did this, I added up all my expenses and I was actually losing money because I was pricing my jobs completely wrong. All you need to do is price your jobs like that. What's up, dude?
Hey, Jared. How's it going?
You know, work is hard, dude.
Work is hard.
Things you don't understand are difficult.
Yeah, or like trying to figure out what you need to understand about your business to be able to feel like you know enough to be able to do something.
Yeah, make good decisions.
Yeah. Like how much data do you need to make a good decision, and especially when you don't really know what you're getting into?
When you don't really know what you're getting into, but I think probably one of the best things that we can do is just say, okay, here's a guy who has done what I want to do. What does he say to do?
Yeah.
Because like we were just going over numbers for a business and a non-plumbing business, and we're like, okay, what do these numbers mean? And what do we do about them? And how do we make good decisions?
Especially when you're thinking about like building a business.
Yeah.
Like
we don't understand all the nuances of what's involved with all that stuff, right? So we could make a change and it could affect our business in a way that we didn't foresee. Whereas if we knew somebody who'd done what we'd want to do, we could just go, is this a good idea? Why or why not?
Yeah.
And they'll go, yes, because of this. Or they'll go, no, because of this.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've been there.
Yeah. I should probably try to talk to as many people as I can find who have done the thing that we're thinking about doing.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I can find a lot of people like that too.
Probably. And that goes with I mean, anybody who's listening to this podcast. I mean, they're in a good spot because they're listening to the podcast. But like, go listen to all our podcasts, every single one, because you'll learn pretty much everything. Most of the stuff I know, as in depth as we can go on a podcast. It'll be in there.
Yep.
And then if you think it's valuable and you want to learn more, download the playbook and then read the playbook. If that's interesting and you want to know more, then go sign up for our coaching program. But I think there's a lot to be learned there. It'd be much easier if somebody was just like, hey, here's a system.
Yeah. Or like, especially if they're like, hey, I already did the thing. And this is all the problems I ran into. And this is what you're not thinking is going to happen, but really it turns out into this. And
And here's the solutions I came up with.
Yeah. So now just go and take all this information and apply it in your own way and have at it.
Heck yeah.
That's way better than going into anything blind.
Heck yeah.
Or even like kind of what we're doing is we're trying to go into this thing with like a degree of information.
Yep.
Sometimes maybe even too much information.
Yep.
That like, cause we don't really know what we're doing.
Yep.
We're just hoping.
Yep.
And we're like, I think this will work because of ... But
Yep.
if the numbers don't really jive, then it's like we still have to overcome the reality that these numbers aren't going to work.
Yep.
Or if this happens in the numbers, you're screwed. So you have to make sure that doesn't happen in the numbers.
Correct.
Yeah, I think talking to somebody, as many people, to try to get a feel for it.
Totally. And we're going to solve some of those problems for some of our listeners because we're going to talk about how to price your jobs. Like all the details from start to finish, like what goes into coming up with pricing, communicating value to the customer, building your price book, how to build the prices and tasks and things in your price book, all that good stuff. We'll go over all that today.
Let me start off with a really cool question.
Yeah.
Jared, what happens if you don't price your jobs correctly?
Well, there's two things that happen. Number one, you run the risk of not making any money, right? If everything is underpriced, you're not going to make money. That's what usually happens to most people.
So when guys set out and they don't know how to price their jobs, they usually go lower.
Yes.
Have you ever known anybody who went higher?
Well, here's the funny thing. So a lot of people will go lower, right? They'll be like 120 an hour, 135 an hour. I've seen as low as 90 an hour.
Yep,
yeah,
I've seen that.
I talked to a guy in Home Depot the other day. He was $75 an hour.
Ooh, dang. Full plumber or handyman or what?
Full plumber.
Wow.
Funny story. I'm decking out my camper van,
Mm-hmm.
right? And and I get to the plumbing portion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the portion I was looking forward to the least because I've done a lot of plumbing and I'm tired of it.
Sure.
So I'm like, I want to get, typically I would use Wurzbo fittings. So Uponor fittings or expansion fittings, whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where to buy those in Pensacola, Florida. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Turns out Lowe's sells them. I didn't know this. So I'm in Home Depot and I'm buying crimp ring fittings.
Yeah.
And if you like crimp ring fittings, that's another argument. I spent an entire year of my life fixing crimp ring fittings.
So you have some feelings.
So I don't really like them. Plus, I think they're a pain in the butt. I would much rather expand my thing and just put the fitting together.
Yeah.
I think it's a better product. I think it's easier.
Dang.
You don't have to get the tool in where you want to work. You can usually do them separately and then put them together. I think it's a better product. That's another argument. You can argue in the comments down below.
Do it. Jared will be there all day, all night, ready to have the argument.
I will. But I didn't know where to get those. So I'm at Home Depot.
Sure.
I'm buying crimp ring fittings. I got the crimper. I got it all in a bucket.
Yeah. Do you have a cart or just the bucket?
It's just a bucket.
Okay, you're carrying around the bucket, filling the bucket.
I got like some fittings in my hands.
Okay.
And this dude comes up to me.
Comes up to you.
Yes.
You didn't seek him out.
No, comes up to me with his phone and he goes, "Hey, is this you?"
No
and he's
way.
got my social media pulled up on his phone. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me."
And he's like, "What are you buying this crap for?"
No. I took the fittings and I like put them behind my back. And I was like,
Oh,
busted.
You're buying some crap.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Buying junky fittings from Home Depot. He's probably like, "What is this guy doing?" Like, I thought he owns a business. And
Yeah, this guy's in here.
he's in here buying crimp ring fittings.
Yeah, man, this guy's a hack.
Yeah, whatever. I talked to him. He was a nice guy.
Yeah.
Just started his business here in Pensacola. And he'd worked commercial and never really worked residential service. But he was getting residential service calls, and then, that's all he can pretty much do. $75 an hour. I said, "Dude, you got to go more expensive or you are going to lose your butt."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, dude, you got to be like 400 minimum." He was like, "Whoa, no way." I'm like, "Yeah, look at," I named one of the other companies in town. I said, "Well, what do you think they charge?" He goes, "I don't know." I said, "They're like $500 or $600 an hour." He was like, mind blown. Never heard from him again. I gave him my phone number, told him to reach out to me. If he's listening to this, I'm still here. You can still reach out to me.
You still have the phone number.
Yep. I'll help you out whenever I can. So typically what happens is they charge super cheap.
Yeah.
But one thing that I have seen happen is these guys will catch on to like what the big companies are charging for a water heater, right? And so they'll start, rather than going hourly on a water heater, they'll start going flat rate on things, like certain things.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
So they'll be like, I'm like 130 for service work, but then on water heaters, I'm like, $3,200. And it's like, why? I saw somebody else's bid, and so I went a little cheaper.
Yeah.
And the reality of that is like, you don't know why you're pricing for what, right? You have no idea. You don't even know if you're making money at $3,200. You don't know if you're on your service work when you're 135 or whatever you are. You don't know if you're making money on that. And you don't know if you can grow a business off of that. No clue, right? So, and that's typically the case. Whether they're they could be overpriced on that water heater and not know it.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Just because Joe Blow down the street's doing it for $6,000 doesn't mean you should do it for $6,000. So I think the fairest way to price is to actually learn the numbers in your business and then base your prices off of what you need to price your jobs in order to cover your expenses and still make money.
And the expenses you're trying to cover, are you trying to cover current day one expenses?
So, and I guess that's that can be up for debate. You could do it that way. It's just going to take you longer to put cash away in the bank.
Sure, because if you were properly doing your numbers, you would have profit to put away in the bank.
Correct. And so I guess the way I like to think about it, there's times in your business when when it's more expensive to run the business than any other time. And we call these the valley of despair. And there's always a valley of despair right before you want to grow even more.
Sure.
So the first one that you experience, and it's when overhead versus how many employees are out in the field billing. Like we call employees out in the field billing the customer. They are revenue producing employees. People in the office, they contribute to producing revenue,
Of course.
but they are not directly related to producing revenue. Right?
This isn't a value statement.
Correct. That's why your technicians on your P&L will be in your COGS, and your office staff will be in your overhead because they support the revenue producing. They don't actually produce revenue, okay? They help the revenue producers produce more revenue, but they don't actually produce any revenue, okay? So there comes these points in your business where you have to add on overhead in order to continue to scale.
Sure.
And you don't necessarily get to add more revenue producing employees. You have to add the overhead first before you can add more revenue producing employees.
Sure.
So a good example of that is when you get 3 guys out in the field. If you want to continue to grow from there, the business owner typically needs to pull out of the field, which means he's no longer a revenue producing employee. And he needs to become general manager and business owner. Hopefully he's got a CSR at that point already, answering the phones, handling the schedule, all that stuff. But he's going to handle all of the general manager tasks and growing the business, right? So general manager is going to take about half his time. Growing the business is going to take about half his time. And then he can start to add technicians out in the field. But there's some things that he needs to get in place before he goes and does that. So he has to pull out of the field so he can put those things in place so he can continue to grow. Okay. So you go from the business only having to pay the owner as a technician to the business having to pay the owner as overhead. Okay. So he goes from the COGS down below gross profit down into the overhead section.
Sure.
Okay. And when you do this, by the way, you should put yourself, your wages as the owner in the correct spot on your P&L.
Yeah, and then I guess move it when you move yourself.
Move it. Yeah. I mean, just put it in the correct spot.
Sure, yeah, gotcha.
If you're out in the field producing revenue, have your wage show up in the COGS.
Even if it's like salaried and stuff, yeah.
Don't salary yourself. Pay yourself an hourly wage just like you would a technician. And if you need more money than that, then have it come out as an owner draw and have that come out as overhead.
Gotcha. Yeah, because then, yeah, okay.
Or other expenses, owner draw, like all the way down at the bottom. So you could see net before owner draws and net after would be a good idea.
Yeah. And real quick, how come? Why do it that way?
So because it's really telling to look at your P&L and see what your gross profit percentage is. It should be somewhere around 50-55% minimum. Minimum gross profit.
Would you recommend that if you're an owner paying yourself as a technician, should you pay yourself like what you would pay a technician?
I would, yeah.
Okay, so you wouldn't like, even if you need to make more as an owner, you would say, okay, but I would never pay a technician more than this much. So that's how much I'm going to pay myself. And then I'm going to owner draw for the rest of my living expenses.
Yep. Okay. That way, if you're out in the field being a technician and you're setting your prices like we're going to talk about in this podcast, and then you're going out and doing the work and all that good stuff, you should be able to produce a 55% gross margin. No problem.
Yeah.
If not, there's something wrong, right? If you didn't pay yourself like a regular wage like that, and you put yourself in overhead, you would never know if you're hitting the right margins because your wages aren't included in your COGS.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So
sure.
It'll give you, no matter what your overhead is, you'll know whether you're light on overhead or fat on overhead. You'll know you're pricing your jobs correctly just by looking at your gross profit. That's the beauty of it.
Okay, I understand.
You may need to hit a higher percentage of gross profit in order to cover all your overhead. In fact, in the scenario that I talk about with 3 technicians and an owner, sometimes on the way there, like on the way to that, you actually have to shoot for a higher gross profit. And sometimes you have to be more expensive than some of your competitors just so you can spend more money on advertising and vehicles and tools and, growing.
Sure, yeah.
Growing your business. That money has to come from somewhere, right? And it's okay if you have zero left over for profit because you're sinking it all back into the business and you're growing.
Yeah.
But if you're growing at a rate that it's sucking up all your profit and then some, you may need to shoot for a higher gross margin so you can fund the business growth.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you wouldn't be able to do that for very long because you drain all your cash. Yeah.
Yeah, and it literally might be the difference between like $5 or $10 on your hourly rate.
True.
Like that could be the difference.
Yeah.
And to the customer, they're not going to care.
No.
Not at all. Won't even notice. The typical job is 2 hours long. If you're $10 an hour or more, it's $20 for the end user.
Yeah, the sale conversion percentage on that versus what the price would be previous, $20 cheaper is not going to be a crazy number.
No, but you have to watch out because you can play that game all day long. Today I could say, $10 more an hour is not that big of a deal. It's only $20. And then tomorrow I could say the same thing.
Yeah, and then suddenly you're like $90, $100 more per hour. And
right.
then suddenly you're...
right. So the name of the game is keep expenses low.
Yeah.
As low as possible, within reason. Spend money on things that push your business forward and nothing else. And really, if you really want to get like down to the what makes it all work, you the owner, if you can take as little money out of the business as possible, the better off you're going to be, right? So if you would pay your plumbers $30 an hour and you can't live on $30 an hour, you're going to have to take more money out of the business,
right.
And it's going to be less profitable because of that. You're going to have less money to put back into the business. And this is a lot of people run into this problem when they're growing their business. They'll get slammed with work. And so they'll be really, really busy and they'll produce a bunch of cash. And then they'll be like, cool, I'm going to go spend all this money.
Being a business owner is so rad.
Yeah. And then slow times come and it's slow for 3 months. And then they drain all their cash reserves, right? Whatever they had left.
Sure.
Maybe they go in the negative even, right? Have credit card debt and all that stuff. Don't do that. Set a budget for yourself, like a personal budget, and force yourself to live under it. That'd be one of the best things you can do. And then leave all that money in the business until that business has grown.
Sure.
Until there's so much money there, it's ridiculous. And you're like, why am I sitting on this pile of cash?
Sure.
It's ridiculous amounts of cash. It's not going to come for a while.
Right.
And be comfortable with that. And just know you're going to be investing back in it.
Is that what you did in your business?
What's that?
What you just described, where you minimize your personal expenses so that you could just stack cash in your business so that then you could, whether you needed to float slow times or make heavy investments when you needed to.
When I grew my business, my wife still worked. So she made like $60K a year.
Gotcha.
We could live off of her income. So I didn't need to make anything from the business.
Gotcha.
Whatsoever.
Yeah.
All the money I made for almost the first year went straight back into the business. Every single penny, or stayed in the bank account. And then my wife quit her job to come hang out. That's when we started paying ourselves $80,000 a year. And then I lived off of that for a long time. Yeah. Until there was so much cash in there. It was like, this is dumb. Like, why are we sitting on this cash? We should probably, the business will never use all this cash. We should probably go invest some of it. That's when you go start using your cash.
Gotcha.
And even then, why would you, there's certain things you can increase your lifestyle. I've never seen the need for it. I mean, I guess there's some things I do. Most of my money has gone back into businesses.
Sure. Yeah. A ton of your money has gone back into businesses.
Either investments or businesses.
Yeah.
And we keep our living expenses fairly low.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Yeah.
Because I want the money Like if I spend it on myself, it's gone.
Sure.
If I invest it in something that makes more money, I have more money to spend.
Yeah.
If I do that long enough, there'll be so much money I can't spend it all.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, it definitely seems like you're playing the long game. Like to the guy who's just starting out, like the temptation, especially if you've never made like more than like 100K or something.
Yeah.
You go into business for yourself, the temptation is to be like, oh my gosh, I'm making 150K right now.
Yeah.
Is to start living like you're making 150K. That's the temptation.
Yeah.
But by really becoming very disciplined, you have a much higher chance to actually, well, one, just succeed in your business, period. And then two, succeed well to where that now you're not only making 150K, you're making whatever you wanted to make, truly wanted to make.
Yeah. Plus, there's ultimate freedom in that.
True.
If you live off of more than you make or exactly what you make, that's like ultimate bondage.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much you make.
No, it could be
you make $1 million.
It could be $3 million, right? You'll always be looking for more.
Yeah.
Most business owners, at least most plumbers, go into business because they want the freedom.
Sure.
Not because they want a fancy house and nice cars. When they start making money, they go, cool, I can buy a fancy house and nice cars. Because that's kind of what society tells you,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
But the reality is like fancy house and nice cars are really going to suck if you're having to bust your ass every single day to make sure those payments are made.
Yep.
And I have met people in this situation. Their business is making 30, 40, 50K a month, and they're spending every last penny on their house, their cars, their wife's shopping habits, their kids' extracurricular activities, and it's ultimate bondage. And the freedom they sought out to get, they don't have, and they could have, right? Whereas, like on the flip side, if you just keep your expenses low and you're making way more than what you need to live off of, that's ultimate freedom. I have the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. That's better than having a fancy house and a nice car, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hands down.
And I would even say, like, if you want to get the fancy house and the nice car, I think there's a time for that.
I think so. I think people get it way too soon.
I think they do too. And especially because, like, you start to recognize that, oh, well, that car is only this much per month, and I already make like, 10K more than that.
Yeah.
What is that going to do? It really is a snowball effect. Or you have a crappy couple months, and then suddenly that car payment or that fancy house payment, and typically those things come with things that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
Especially if you're talking about a fancy house, that make it more expensive.
I don't know why anybody would want a giant house.
Yeah, it's already hard cleaning like a small house.
Yeah, you got to take care of that thing. Like,
it's a lot of work just to
I see these houses, they're like, I was looking at one yesterday. I was looking at buying some land, and it's really hard to find land here that has enough land for what I want.
Yeah.
But you can find some houses that are already built on bigger lots. Well, I found this one. It was like $7 million. And so I'm looking at it. Not that I'm going to buy it.
Oh, come on.
And it's on like 29 acres.
Yeah.
And the entire 29 acres is like landscaped.
Oh, wow. It's like.
And I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, you got to have like a full-time person
have
just
a crew, man.
Maintaining the
whole thing is landscaped.
The whole thing. It was
like
crazy.
a golf course or something.
No, it was like nice. It was like, so the driveway was a long ways away. The driveway was lined with all sorts of lights and bushes and plants and all sorts of stuff. And then all around the house was like that. And then they had a big old garden area and the pool area and a pool house. And it was ridiculous. I just look at it and I go, no way.
Yeah.
Like I don't even want to think about that.
Yeah, that's so much. There's like so many. It's like now you have to like manage all these subcontractors.
Yeah. Just give me a cabin in the woods.
Yeah.
With no grass.
And you can figure out what to do with the woods.
I'm not going to do nothing with the woods.
Except for put a bunch of holes in them trees.
I'll put a hammock up and hang out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people get that stuff way too early. Yeah. So we were my daughter likes to look at the big fancy houses, and she found one that was like $12 million, and she saw like on Zillow, you can see the Zestimate.
Of course.
Is that what it is? Is it the Zestimate?
So. I think it is. So, yeah.
And it's like how much the monthly payment's going to be. It's like $30,000 a month or something like that.
Jeez.
Yeah, something like that. And
Yeah,
and
that
I'm
makes
like,
sense.
man, I'd have to be making a lot of money to put 30 grand a month into my house.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd have to be making a
Just
million
a straight
month
payment. Yeah.
for me to be comfortable with that.
Interesting.
It'd be $1 million a month is what I have to make for that. Then maybe I'd be comfortable.
I would be interested to see you making $1 million a month and then see what you would say at that point.
There's someday I'm gonna make $1 million a month, and I'm not gonna have a $30,000 house payment.
Probably not.
I'm gonna own a piece of land, and then there's gonna be a few $100,000 house on it, and that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
So what did your daughter say about the 30? Was she like, Dad, come on, it's only 30K per month?
Yeah.
Of course
Dad,
she did.
Come on, let's buy this house. It'll
Yeah,
be
come
rad.
on now. Come on. You're like rich or something. Like, let's go do that. Like, we could all live in that thing.
Yeah,
It's
no
awesome.
way, dude.
Was it on the beach or anything? Or
I probably.
Yeah.
She likes looking in like California houses on the coast.
doesn't she know that California would be like kind of not that great to live in?
Dude, there's some houses in New York. This is way off topic. Just piles of crap, dude. 1.8, 2.8 million. Just a piece of junk just for the land.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy that people have the money to buy those and do something with it. Just buy it and build. Like a lot of people probably just buy that, tear the house down, and build a new house.
Definitely.
It would probably be a good investment.
Probably
actually,
would be. Yeah.
come to think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My buddy's in Denver and
Oh yeah.
he bought, before COVID, he bought like a renovation house that he fixed up and everything. And I don't know what he bought it for, but it's like doubled in value. And he's going to go sell it. But he's like, dude, you can't even live in this city. He's like, both me and my wife work and we make good money and we're priced out of this place. It's like, I don't know who's moving to these joints.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, 1.8 million for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. Like that sounds great with no yard. It's, yeah.
I know a guy who owns a plumbing business in Denver, and they're like $800 an hour.
Yeah.
Something silly like that.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. And so how do they, well, I guess, how did he know to be at $800 an hour, not $600 an hour? $400 an hour.
So there, on pricing, there's two schools of thought. And if you want to know about the other school of thought, we did a whole podcast on it. It's called margin pricing. I would listen to this one and then go listen to that one because you have a much better idea of what we're talking about. It's probably 2, maybe 3 podcasts ahead of this one. But typically what you're going to do is you're going to look at your business. Okay. So imagine there's the scenario we just laid out. There's a 3-man shop with a CSR, with an owner who's acting as the GM/owner.
Out of the truck, yeah?
Out of the truck. They have, vans, all the tools they need. They have an office and a shop space. Like they're a legitimate business, okay, at this point.
They have a marketing agency.
They have a marketing agency. They're doing proper marketing, all the good stuff. They're legit. Got uniforms,
Tablets and stuff.
Service Titan, all that junk. Take that business, okay? At that point in time, it's really expensive for them to run.
Sure. At this, 3 guys out in the field, guy just pulled into the general manager position.
Now the owner has to get paid out of, he's an overhead expense
yeah,
now,
he's an overhead
right?
now, yeah.
So technically, they need to have more gross profit left over in order to
Sure.
cover the owner's wages and still have enough net profit at the bottom.
Yeah.
If you didn't price yourself properly at that point in time, when you got there and you pulled out of the truck, like if you ever got there at all, most people don't ever get there because they can't.
No.
Okay.
Well, real quick, like, why can't they?
Because they're not priced high enough.
Okay, so they're the guys who are probably sitting at the anywhere between like 90, and 150 for sure, yeah?
Yeah, if you're under 400, you're not priced right.
Yeah,
It's just
at
how
least
it
to
is.
like get to that point. Well, actually, I want to back up just for a second. I think it's also important to understand, like, if you're and tell me what you think about this, but if you're a plumber and all you want is just to make more money and never have any employees, does that change how I price my jobs? And
No. Why would you, why be cheaper than you need to be? And that's what I'm saying. Like, this guy at this point, he's going to have to be at least $400 an hour to cover all of his expenses, pay all the bills, cover all the overhead, pay the plumbers, pay the insurance, pay the shop rent, pay the van rent, pay the gas bill, still pay himself, and have a profit. Okay, going to have to be $400 an hour at that point. Okay, if you're smaller than that, whether you're one guy, two guy, if it's just yourself operating out of your house, your van is paid off, why would you be any cheaper? If you are, you're just leaving money on the table. That's it.
Yeah, and you're choosing to leave money on the table.
You're choosing to work more
Yeah.
to make the same.
Yeah.
And you really could just work less and make the same
Yeah. Sure.
and have more profit left over.
Yeah.
Okay, same goes for this. That guy with 3 guys out in the field, he gets 4 or 5 guys out in the field. He can technically be cheaper because his overhead went up a tiny, tiny bit, right? Had to add a few guys to Service Titan. Maybe his insurance, workers' comp went up a little bit.
You have a tiny number.
Gas bill went up a little bit.
Sure.
But now he's got 2 more technicians out in the field that can produce revenue.
Yeah.
So his ability to produce revenue in comparison to his overhead shot up at a much higher, faster rate, right? He could technically be cheaper.
Yeah, because then he can essentially, if his gross profit margin is going to increase if he stays at that same rate, right? And now he could, and then he could go, oh, my gross, like what would you say the gross profit would shoot up to in that case? If he,
Gross would be the same.
okay.
Net would go up.
Okay, so his net would go up, but his gross would stay the same.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. So he could go, oh, my net went up to like 30% or something.
And he should go, sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to chill right here for a few minutes,
Sure.
collect a bunch of cash so that I can reinvest it back in my business because I know once I get to 6 or 7 techs, I'm going to have to hire a GM
Yeah.
to start doing the GM stuff so I can continue to grow the business, right? When I hire a GM, guess what's going to happen to my prices? They're going to have to go up
Yeah. So if you were the guy who,
because now my overhead went up, but my ability to produce more revenue didn't.
yeah. Yeah. So if you're the guy who dropped your prices after you saw that, oh, I'll make a more profit, I'm just going to drop my prices for whatever reason you wanted to,
Don't do it.
you're going to have to raise your prices later.
Yep.
So it would be silly to drop them only to just raise them later. It'd be silly because it'd be confusing to your guys, which then would make a weird service to your customers because your guys are confused.
And this, let's say you got to 5 guys, you lower your price, and then guy 5 quits.
Then you have to raise
Now
your
you got to
price
raise your
again.
price again.
That's even more
right?
confusing to your remaining guys.
Let's say times got slow and you didn't collect as much cash as you could when times were good.
Sure.
Now you're hurting.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a great argument to like,
I would never price less.
yeah.
Guy with 24 trucks.
Mm-hmm.
We ran into this today. You talked to a guy that had 24 trucks doing 10% profit, net profit at the end of the day, doing $5 million in revenue with 24 trucks. So he's severely underpriced because we do 5 million with 8 trucks. So he's probably a third of what he needs to be. So he's probably $200 an hour.
Yeah, probably.
He stays in business, makes a 10% profit. He probably thinks there's nothing wrong. Crazy part is that guy is literally leaving probably $1.5 million profit, money in his pocket on the table by being price wrong, by worrying about being the cheapest. That's wild.
Especially because pricing can be one of the most impactful, I would say relatively easiest levers to pull.
Think about this.
It's like so simple. It's a very simple lever to pull.
It's the easiest lever to pull. It's the easiest lever to pull, and nobody wants to pull it
Yeah, how come?
because they're scared of it.
What are they afraid is going to happen?
They're afraid if they're more, it bases from the mindset of, it's the blue collar mindset is what it is. They think that in order to be competitive, you have to be the cheapest.
Sure. Everything's about money. Everything's about price. That's the whole world revolves around that idea.
Yes.
Every exchange. It dominates every exchange.
Yep. But if that's the case, why is Rolex still in business? Why is Gucci in business?
Sure.
Why is Dior in business? Why is the guy who owns Gucci and Dior now the richest man on the planet?
Yeah.
It wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
He's worth over $200 billion.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Look up the difference after this podcast, or anybody that's watching this. Go to your phone and Google how many days is 1,000,000 seconds. And then Google how many days is 1,000,000,000 seconds. It will blow your mind.
Yeah.
The difference. Just to give you the idea between millions and billions.
Yeah.
And then think about the fact that the guy who owns, what is it? What is his thing? What is his real business thing called?
I don't know what it's called.
It's Gucci, it's Louis Vuitton, and it's Dior. It's like LVMH or something is his business name that owns all those companies. Then think about that he is worth over $200 billion, and let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah. Well, because then, you could also be like, well, how many seconds is 200 billion?
Yep. And he provided, like, he built his empire on providing a premium product at a premium price. And you can do the same thing with your plumbing business.
And the funny thing, it's not even like
people want to buy Louis Vuitton.
They do.
People
have
want
no problem with
to
it.
buy Gucci.
Or even iPhone.
People want to buy an iPhone.
Yeah. There's tons of options out there that are way cheaper.
Yeah.
You can even buy an old iPhone off eBay for like $40.
But people don't want the old iPhone.
They want the new one, even though it's like $1,800.
But think about this. So the difference between plumbing businesses, like, it's like flip phone versus iPhone.
Yeah.
Okay. People don't want a flip phone. Some people do.
Sure.
And they go buy one. But the majority of the market wants an iPhone, right? And so, or a good portion of the market wants an iPhone. A large enough portion of the market wants an iPhone to where Apple can produce this iPhone and make billions of dollars off of it, right? The same is true for your plumbing business. Enough people want a premium plumbing service, and I think this is only going to get worse. The home service market is growing by like I think it's $5 billion a year. Maybe it's $9 billion a year. Maybe it's 5% or 16% or something. I don't know. It's $5 to $9 billion a year. I know those numbers are correct. Wide range, but it's something like that. So it's growing fairly decent. Okay, it's a good market to be in, and there's a shift that's happening. So
sure,
old, like we see it in my business. We go serve anybody over 55. They expect that you're going to give them an hourly rate, and you're going to tell them how much the materials cost.
Sure.
And you're going to add those two up, and that's what the bill is going to be, depending on how long you were there and how many materials you used.
And that customer's probably thinking, I wonder if I just did this myself. Would this be cheaper?
Some of them are still willing to pay, right?
Sure.
They have no problem paying somebody to do something. But that's their way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
And they want you to be there for as little time and use as little materials so that it's as cheap as possible, right? And that's not all 55 plus year olds, but it's a good portion of them, where we could probably call it the majority. Okay. Now you take people who are like 35 to 55, and a huge portion of those customers don't care about a breakdown on their bill.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
They don't care at all.
From my own, I don't think I've ever cared, even before like talking to you about plumbing stuff. I don't think it was ever an interest to me about anything about that.
Yeah, you don't care what the labor is. You don't care about how much the materials cost. You just care about what you're getting and how much what you're getting costs.
I actually, even speaking personally, and you can attest to this with the way of like my crappy car purchases in the past, is I'm just cared about that. The thing that I wanted to happen happened.
Correct.
And I'm probably just going to accept the first bid that walks through my door.
The other part we'll work on.
Yeah.
Making sure you have the money for it.
Yeah. That part, that comes later.
That comes with adulthood.
Yeah. With what now?
When you're almost 40, or when you're pretty much 40.
You're working on your 40th year. Yeah.
I'm pretty. I have a friend. He's older. He's just turned 71. His wife just turned 76. And I called him and I told him. He goes, "How old are you?" And I said, "I'm just turned 39. And I'm telling everybody I'm pretty much 40." He's like, "Yeah, I tell Ruth she's pretty much 80. She just turned 76." I was like, "Yeah, she pretty much did."
Yeah, you're pretty much there. Yeah.
Anyway, in this generation of 35 to 55, right? There's a lot of people just like you.
Yeah, I think so.
When you call a plumber, you want them to get there right now.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to have the crap on their truck.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to fix it right now. And if it costs more, you don't care.
Well, it's not even like I would have this idea of it costs more. It's just going to cost what it costs.
It costs what it costs.
Because in my mind, there is no other option because if the guy is there, and I'm not
okay, let's say your sump pump went out and you called the company. They were there in 10 minutes. They gave you a price. It was $1,000. They fixed it, Johnny on the spot. 20 minutes after you called them, you were able to use all your sewer in your house again. Okay. You'd be like, cool.
I just assumed that was, I'd be like, yeah, that must be the thing. Cool.
Some pump goes out again. You can't remember who you called, so you call a different company.
Oh, sure. Now I have an idea.
They show up the next day, come out, look at your sump pump, quote you $200, but then they got to come back the next day to get it fixed. Even though they were cheaper, you'd be like, oh, I wish I would have called the other guys. You would easily spend the $800 to get a more premium product.
Yeah, I would actually be a little confused as to why it was $200. Like, I'd be like, why is this so cheap?
Yeah.
It aroused suspicions in me to be like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then I'd probably be like looking at him a little closer, like, what is happening?
Yeah, is he actually going to do a good job?
Yeah, it's like the other guy did it for $1,000. This is $200.
His van looks kind of ratty.
Yeah, I think there'd be other things. I'd be a little, I'd almost be low-key annoyed.
So in the 35 to 45 group, how old are you?
34.
Oh, dude, you're in the...
Yeah.
You're in the young group. Yeah. Okay, in the 35 to 40
I'm not
to
even
55
in this group yet.
You're not.
I'm not even in this conversation.
But this is the best part. There's a lot of people that are like that. And it's kind of a new thing. And these people are all buying houses and having to fix their stuff. And they're all making enough money now to where they can afford a plumber. And they don't have the time to fix their plumbing.
Or don't know how to fix their plumbing.
And they
want to learn how to fix their plumbing.
Yeah, and they want the premium product. Okay? 35 and under, the vast majority of those people... Once they start buying homes, we're already seeing some of it in the upper range of those ages, like yourself. They want somebody at their house. They want them to show up, look professional, do a professional job, get there ASAP, get that sucker fixed, and it doesn't matter what it costs. So, how should we run our business? Knowing that this is what's coming. It's already here to probably 50%. But then it's only going to get worse. The need for this type of business is going to skyrocket. So we're looking at the marketplace and we're going, this is where it's going.
Sure, yeah, it's only going to get
It's going to an
worse.
instant gratification economy within the plumbing world, within this home service world. Where is it going to go? Like, how should we position ourselves knowing that's where the market's going to go? We should position it to serve the majority of the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
So you're growing a business. You need to be able to get there quick. You need to be able to do a good job. You need to hire competent people. And you need to provide fixes right now, today, do it well, and provide that premium product for your customer. Okay? That has to come at a premium price because it costs you money to provide that value. You have to buy better vehicles, better tools, stock more on your vehicles, be able to get to people quicker, which means you have to have more people on staff. You have to be able to float those people on staff during slow times. And that's all set up to provide that premium product to the customer. Costs you a pretty penny to do that, so you have to bill the customer a pretty penny. Do you pull those dollars out of your butt?
It's just the cost of doing business, Jared.
Or do we calculate how much it costs us and base our prices off of what it costs to provide that service to the customer?
Oh, that's definitely
and
what
a
we
healthy
do.
profit margin. That's the fairest way to price in my mind. It's dishonest to charge less, and it's dishonest to charge more than what's needed.
Sure.
Is in my opinion. So the fairest thing to do is to say, I know my numbers. I'm certain this is what I need to charge to make a healthy net profit at the end of the day. Make sense? Okay. Easy peasy, dude.
Yeah, easy. Done. Everybody's making a bunch
Podcast
of money
over.
now. Yeah, easiest podcast ever.
Okay. Fact of the matter is you cannot provide that service for less than $400 an hour. I don't care where you live, how cheap you're running your business. You can't do it.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
And even if you're saying at this point, yeah, but Jared, I do it at $250 an hour and my profit margins are huge.
I've seen that happen one time. The only way it's possible is if your dad started the business, bought all of the equipment and all of the vehicles, and you're not including your owner wage in your overhead.
And I would
So net profit is no vehicle expenses, no equipment expenses, and no owner pay.
Yeah.
Then you can do it.
Yeah.
But outside of that, you can't.
Yeah.
And you don't pay your plumbers very well. And you don't provide them with health insurance.
And you probably don't have a marketing budget because you're still on the word of mouth of the old company in
you
town.
have zero marketing budget because you've been word of mouth for 60 plus years. It's the only way. To that company, I would say, some point in time, you're going to have to buy new vehicles and equipment.
Yeah.
Why aren't you charging your customer for them now so that at that time you can afford to buy them?
Yeah, because it's either that or let's say you have a giant cash reserve because your margins are so high.
1 year, you're going to have to buy all new vehicles.
Chunk into that cash reserve.
That year, you're going to make no profit.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
You should be thinking ahead with your business. Also, if somebody in your marketplace wants to come in and market and take your work, you're not marketing.
Yeah.
They're slowly taking your work.
Yeah.
You should be growing at a rate of at least 9%. If you're not growing at 9%, here's why I say that. S&P's been growing roughly for the last 25 years at a rate of 9% year over year on average, which means the economy is growing roughly about 9% year over year on average. You should at least be keeping up with the economy.
Sure.
Otherwise, the economy is getting bigger and you're not getting bigger with it, which means other people are taking that slice of that 9%. And the crazy part is all they have to do is market to your customer and they start taking your customers.
Sure. Yeah. Because
that's exactly what I did in Fairbanks with my business. We exploded because nobody was marketing.
Sure.
We took everybody's customers.
Sure.
It was super easy. Like it was one of the lucky draws that I had.
Yeah.
That nobody marketed.
Yeah.
And if they did market, they did a really crappy job at it.
Yeah. Kind of like well, probably because everyone was like, well, we haven't had the market ever.
Yeah.
Why should we have to market now?
Yeah. So we've taken a huge portion of the marketplace and I will never stop marketing.
Yeah. So for somebody to come and take back the market share, they're going to have to like double down on marketing efforts.
Yeah. Think about like big corporations, Budweiser. Do you think they need to continue to market for people to keep drinking Budweiser?
Probably not. I would say they probably need to keep marketing so that they can continue to keep the same amount, if not more people drinking Budweiser.
They continue to market.
Yeah.
Day after day,
True.
week after week.
They still buy Super Bowl slots.
Year after year, they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars marketing Budweiser.
Yeah.
Everybody in the United States knows who Budweiser is,
Yeah.
yet they continue to market. McDonald's still markets. There's not a single person in the United States who can talk who doesn't know who McDonald's is. If there is, I'd like to meet them. McDonald's still markets because they know if they stop marketing, they start losing market share.
Yeah.
Right? So they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars marketing their company that everybody already knows about. Because they know they make more money when they do.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with your plumbing business. Think about if you wanted a hamburger and you never saw any McDonald's marketing. You would eventually forget about McDonald's.
Sure.
If you never heard about McDonald's, there was no word of mouth. Like word of mouth is just a form of marketing. So there was no word of mouth. There were no commercials. You didn't see a McDonald's driving down the road, and nobody talked about McDonald's.
Yeah. But
yet then you saw Burger King commercials about how delicious their Whopper was. I mean, I'm getting hungry for Burger King just talking about it. Like, if you wanted a hamburger, you would end up at Burger King.
Yeah, especially if you didn't know anything else.
Especially if you saw Burger Kings around and your friends were talking about Burger King. You wanted a hamburger and you could see Burger King in your head. You could see the one down the street and you'd be like, I know exactly where I'm going even, right? That's what you need to do with your plumbing company. It's the same thing. Okay, so here's We've covered the math a million times on how to get your hourly rate. So we're going to cover it really fast. And if you want to know more, you can download our playbook. There's a link in the description. In the playbook, what is there? There's literally the math on how to figure out your hourly rate.
There's lots talk about how you think about it.
There's like 3 pages that talk about why it's the math. And then there's also a link to our hourly rate calculator where you can go enter in all of your expenses and it will do the math for you. Okay. And with that comes, there's like a 45-minute video on how to use it as well. Super great tool. That tool that you get for free literally made me millions of dollars. Hands down. It's like the #1 tool that I used to make millions of dollars.
Real quick on that, like, what is the biggest mistake that people make when they fill out that calculator?
Biggest mistake. So when you do that calculator, you have to think about, like, if you're just one guy, you want to fill out that calculator like you have 3 guys. Because you want to say, okay, when I get to this point in my business, the most expensive part,
like what we've been talking about,
what is it going to cost me to run my business?
If you want to grow your business or even just charge and not leave money on the table, you have to charge for a particular part in your business.
Correct.
You'll have to get there eventually.
And the whole name of the game is, as you grow your business and you get new expenses, you go put it in the calculator.
Yes.
Like, take time to fill that thing out properly.
Yeah.
It will save your bacon.
Yes.
It will make or break your business.
Yes, because if you don't know the primary function of how you make money, you can't expect to actually make money.
It's not even the primary function. Like, you have to understand the numbers. And when I say the numbers, it's expenses, how those expenses relate to your business, how many technicians you have relates to how much income you can make versus how much money goes out. Like, you have to understand that flow of money.
Yes.
When I look at that calculator, I understand, like, if you went to go, we still use this to this day. And if you went and looked, every single expense that we have, every single penny, and then a little bit more, because we use it to budget, is in our calculator. It's in the expenses section. It is filled out to the T.
Like, it's like that calculator in that playbook is a real tool.
Yeah, we still use it to this day. And I understand every little detail of what that calculator is doing, right? So if you don't understand what it's doing, go study it. Click on the cell and, like, look at the equation and try to figure out what's happening, because that stuff is important to know.
Yeah. I think when people go to that, because this is what I experience a lot when I ask people about, like, hey, did you use the calculator? What did you get? Usually what happens is they're like, yeah, I used it, and it's like $200 an hour. It's the exact same. Like, I'll hear a lot that it's the same as whatever they're charging.
They didn't watch the video.
No, I don't think they watched the video.
They didn't do it right.
And that's why, like, did you watch the video?
And
they're like, yeah, they just don't take the time, because I don't think they recognize that it's not like a crappy Jared Williams, the influencer, giving somebody a free thing that sucks.
No, take the time to fill it out. Think about it. If it's under 400, then you did it wrong and just charge 400. But keep putting your expenses in that calculator, because eventually it's going to be more.
Like,
promise.
I've talked to people on calls trying to get them into our coaching program.
Yeah.
And they've told me, like, after the first call we've had, they're like, oh, I got to think about it. And then I called them again, like, actually, man, I just got your calculator and I just did it, and now I'm making way more money. So I kind of think I'm actually good now. And it's happened to me a number of times. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, happy for you. But, like, that's just, it's a real tool that if you actually grasp pricing, you can understand how to make money in your business.
Yep.
And then you could go and you could actually do stuff.
Yep.
It unlocks all the possibilities that you're missing right now if you're undercharging.
Correct.
Like, making money, like, charging properly means that now you can actually afford marketing.
Correct.
Now you can actually afford technicians.
Correct.
You can start to do all these things that you've only dreamed of doing in your business.
Correct.
So please use it. Like, use it properly.
Correct.
Like, it's not trash. It's not a trash tool.
I don't think you've ever been correct so long.
I know. I've been trying to get back to get back into, like, the correct, stream of things.
That was a good run of correctness. So, second step, once you know, like, okay, these are my expenses, this is how much I have to charge an hour to be profitable. Second step is, okay, how do I price my jobs? Like, just because you know your hourly rate doesn't mean you can price your jobs. So because a lot of people, when you go look at your hourly rate and it spits out $450 an hour, they're going to be like, holy crap, there's no way. There's no way my customers are going to pay that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're just thinking about, okay, ma'am, I'm $450 an hour and materials are $100. So job is going to cost this much.
Yeah.
Don't present it to your customers that way.
Yeah, probably won't work very well.
No, I mean, because think about it. If in the scenario of your sump pump, guy comes to you and he's like, okay, I'm $450 an hour. If you didn't know me or anything about me, you'd be like, damn, that's like lawyer fees and you're a plumber.
Well, I would just connect it to what I would be making at the time. And I'd be like, oh, so I make like $30 an hour in my job. How is this guy going to charge me $450 an hour?
And you'd be like, dang, I got to work like 3 days to pay this bill.
I'd be like, do baseball players even make this much? Yeah. Like athletes? Like they're the only other people I know who could possibly make this much. Yeah. Because what the average customer is going to be equating is what they make in their wage.
Correct.
And I think plumbers do this too.
Yep.
Because they'll be like, well, I couldn't charge $450, Jared, because I only make $60 an hour.
Yeah.
There's a discrepancy there.
We've had customers ask us how much we pay our plumbers because for some reason, they think all that we have to sell is the plumber's wage and the materials. Like we don't have any other expenses to cover.
Yeah.
Right. Your customer doesn't understand that. They have no idea. There's actually, you can go read a Reddit thread. If you search in Google Prospector Plumbing and Heating, there's a Reddit thread of a guy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Prospector made it to Reddit.
Yeah. Wow. It says poor experience with Prospector Plumbing and Heating, right? It's actually a fun thread to read because you see the people in there. There's a couple like other contractors that got in there and called the guy out. And the guy was a nice guy. It's just a misunderstanding of like what it takes to run a business, right? And so we went up to his house and we did a bunch of work. It was a few $1,000s. We cut out a bunch of sewer underneath his house. I think we had it heat traced and spray foamed and got it all redone. So he had another contractor out to his house, one of our local competitors. And he was like, man, can you look at this work that I had done by Prospector? Because I paid this much for it. And the other contractor, of course, said, man, to the other contractor's defense, they said they did a really good job. Like, this is some really nice looking work.
Yeah.
But we would have been like a third of the price.
Yeah.
Right. I know this other contractor and I know they wouldn't have been a third of the price, but that's a whole other story.
They would have been like more cheaper or like the same?
They would have been really close. Yeah. Maybe a little bit cheaper, but probably about the same at the end of the day. Yeah. It's so for them to go look at a job that was spray foamed and get a total price for it
in like 3 seconds.
They probably would have gone up there and done less work and not as good of a job. And they wouldn't have had it spray foamed, and that would have been on the customer. Gotcha. We took care of the whole thing, start to finish,
gotcha.
Right? The customer didn't have to do a thing.
Yeah, so you took care of the customer, understanding the customer's needs very well.
So what the customer got and what the other company was giving a price for, there may have been some discrepancies in there, okay? Regardless, customer calls our company, and he's like, hey, he called my manager and he's like, hey, so, I paid for this thing and I feel like this comes up a lot. I feel like your prices are just a little high. And my manager says, well, we gave you a price up front. So you knew the cost before getting into it. We told you exactly what we were doing. And so the price is what the price is. If you didn't like the price, you should have said something before you agreed to have the work done and pay that price.
Right.
Well, the guy didn't like that answer. It's probably not the best way to go about talking to the customer about that. My manager was new at the time. He was doing his best. Yeah. I don't blame him.
It's a hard thing to talk to a customer who's just upset about that.
Yeah.
After the fact.
Yep. And so he comes back to my manager on a second call and says, okay, I want a breakdown. He's like, I want to know how much the parts were, how much you paid your plumbers. And my manager said, when you go to a fancy steak restaurant, and
is this what he said, like over the phone or email?
Over the phone. I was there. I heard the whole conversation. He goes, when you go out for a fancy steak and the steak is $120. It's a nice restaurant, really good steak, right? They do a fantastic job cooking it. It's a really nice cut of steak, and it's delicious. Do you ask them for a breakdown of what the waiter was making and the cook was making and how much the steak cost?
Would you feel comfortable doing that? Going to the business owner and
when
like
you
really
looked at
them?
the menu and you saw the $120 and you said, I want that steak.
Yeah.
He goes, I could understand like if there was something wrong with the steak,
Sure.
then going back and saying, I paid $120 for this and it was half gristle or it didn't taste very good. But because you got the price up front and you got what you wanted in the end, I don't see where the discrepancy is here.
It was only until you went to a different restaurant and no, you didn't even eat at that other restaurant.
You just saw the price of
You saw the
their
price of somebody
steak.
else's steak, and then you asked the cook and you said, hey, is this a good steak?
Yeah.
And the cook was like, yeah, it's a good steak. What do you think about this steak? It's a great steak. Mine's a little bit cheaper though.
Yeah.
And then you're like, huh.
Man, that
Hold on,
other
I'm gonna
steak
go
place
ask
is ripping people off.
Yeah. Even though you already like said it was a good job. And
Yeah. And so, and it was funny because he'd already told my manager that, we had done a really good job on the work. He's super happy with everything that was done. The customer service was great. We got there really fast. The technician was super friendly and knowledgeable. We did the work right then and there. And the only reason he hired us because nobody else could come out for weeks. And my manager is just going, I don't know what you want. You hired us to do a service. We gave you the price to do the service.
Yeah.
You were happy with everything. You agreed to the price, and now you want to come back to me on the price?
Yeah. Was he wanting money back or something? Or
Yeah. Yeah, he wanted money back.
To like to the tune of what?
I don't know.
Like an
That's the
arbitrary
thing.
like.
Yeah, it's an arbitrary.
I feel like I deserve $2,000 back because
Yes.
of this really like
Yep.
hip shot quote from this other company
Yep,
without understanding the scope of work because all he could see was the finished product.
correct.
Completely arbitrary. I could have gone out there and gave him a bid.
Correct.
I would have done it for $2,000 cheaper.
Correct. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff you're going to run into. And that doesn't matter if you're $100 an hour, $200 an hour, $400 an hour. You're going to run into that kind of stuff. People are going to call and be like, I Googled that part. It's only $40. And your bill was $350, which means you charge me, $310 for labor. How much do you pay your plumbers?
Yeah. Like there's some injustice that needs to be like satisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the world isn't right until they sort of have it out with you. And then like,
I want to break down on this bid.
yeah, I'm going to save the next customer this problem.
Yes.
But getting this guy to help me understand his whatever he's got going on.
Correct. Here's the thing. When you break down a bid between labor and materials for a customer, is that really a fair breakdown?
No.
Just like the steak, there's way more that goes into it than just
Yeah.
the labor of the guy who cooked it and the cost of the steak.
Yeah.
If we were to just take those two numbers, the $110 steak would cost like $10,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah, sure. For the time taken to like cook the steak,
Right.
for the cook, for however like 10 minutes of cook time.
but there's way more than that. There's the waiter.
Yep.
There's the person that greeted you at the door.
Yep.
There's the cost of
busboy.
the utensils and the table and
There's
the
the
rent.
Spotify subscription that's going around.
There's the Spotify subscription. There's the upkeep on the kitchen. There's the dishwasher.
There's the health
There's
codes.
the certifications, the health codes, the business licensing. There's the owner has to get a paycheck.
Yep. There's the napkins. There's the aprons.
The napkins, the aprons, the advertising. There's the times that the restaurant doesn't have anybody in there buying food.
There's
All
the
of
waste,
that stuff.
incredible waste that you have to factor.
Yeah, all of that stuff has to go into pricing that one piece of steak,
Yeah.
or that restaurant doesn't make any money,
Right.
right? Same thing with your plumbing business. If you really wanted to give your customer a fair breakdown, you would say, okay, here's my 1,001 expenses, and here's the percentage of what you paid for those expenses. But that would make 0 sense to the customer.
Yeah. Like I wonder what they would like. Like, what would you say if you were the customer and then I gave you like, and you didn't know, you weren't you were just the guy who was upset about the
Yeah,
steak. And I was like, hey, Jared, here's a 2-page PDF Essentially, it's my P&L.
Yeah.
Check it out. This is the percentage of all the things that went into this one thing.
Yep.
Like, what would your response be at that point?
I wouldn't know what it was.
You'd probably be actually more mad.
I'd be like, no, I wanted a labor material breakdown.
You're like, yeah, it's in
and
there.
I'd be like, I'm not paying for your marketing. I shouldn't have to pay for your marketing.
Yeah.
I'm not paying for your shop rent. I shouldn't have to pay for your
I've
shop
heard
rent.
plumbing business owners make this exact same argument.
Yeah.
Customer doesn't have to pay for that. That's just the price of doing business.
Price of doing business is expenses that need to be covered by the customer. The customer has to pay for every single thing in your business. Every single expense has to be covered by your customer. The business does not pay for any of its expenses. The business makes money. Expenses are paid for by the customer.
Yeah.
What's left over is what the business makes. Everything else is paid for by the customer. Every single thing. Hands down.
Yeah.
Every piece of everything.
Yeah, it's like the customer wants to see like a 1-to-1 ROI where it's like, the only thing I'm paying for is exactly the cost of doing business and nothing more. Because anything more is thievery.
For those customers, I'm sorry, but we can't do business.
Yeah.
Because
that's not the real world.
Because I won't be able to stay in business if that happens.
No.
Right? Yeah, you just can't do it. What's funny is those customers, well, like even plumbing business owners thinking the customer shouldn't have to pay for my workers' comp, or the customer shouldn't have to pay for my business insurance.
Or my marketing budget.
Yeah, where's that coming from? What world are they living in?
I think it just comes from ignorance. Like it just comes from like that person who's thinking that just doesn't actually know how the world works everywhere else in business.
When you say ignorance, it's like a not so nice way of saying it.
What do you mean?
I don't know. It sounds like a negative term.
Well,
I think we should say it's just a misunderstanding of how business works.
Yeah.
When
I say ignorance, I don't mean like
you ignorant piece of crap.
No, I just mean like you don't know what you're doing, which
is true.
Which is me in most of my life all the time.
Dude, 99.9% of times, except for when it comes to pricing your plumbing business.
Yeah, and a little string of correctness.
Yes.
But really, it's like you have to recognize that you're ignorant about things so that you can learn things so that you don't make the same mistake over and over again.
Correct.
Instead of just remaining in, because what the problem is when you remain in your ignorance and then you go and then tell everybody else your ignorant position.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is you're going to look really, really foolish.
Yep.
And
well, yeah, imagine you go start a business and then you don't make any money.
Yeah.
You look like an idiot.
Yeah, and if you hold on to these ideas like, well, the customer doesn't pay for these things.
The idea, there is like an idea with plumbing business owners that there's a sense of pride in the business owner who, and this happens a lot in Fairbanks, and I see it down here in Pensacola as well. I can't speak to anywhere else in the world because I haven't lived there, but there's a sense of pride with the small business owner who still works in his business, and they run like a mom and pop shop, and they make just enough money to pay the bills and make a good wage.
Yeah.
There's a sense of pride there. And it's a strange thing because at that point, they just have a job. And they're not they're just making a paycheck and that's it, right? They don't have a business. They just have a job. Like they could go get that anywhere else. They could go work for another business and still make a paycheck. So really all they've done is bought a job. And what's funny is they can work really hard in this job and it can be very stressful and they can keep going at it. And people will look at them and being like, oh yeah, they're doing so good. Like they're working so hard. They're putting so much time in. They're really, they're doing it. When I look at that, I see like, why don't you just figure out how to make this thing into a real business or go work for somebody else? I don't know why you would do it.
I think it comes down to like there's a misplaced value on certain things, because I would look at that business and be like, okay, so you work really hard, but you can't afford to provide opportunity for others.
Right.
And they'd be like, well, I don't want to charge the customer more because I don't want to, whatever it is, like take more money than I really need to.
Yeah.
And it's like,
but you're taking less than you need to right now.
Yeah.
Is the problem.
And there's like, you could grow a real business and then provide opportunities. Because again, that same person who started this business typically doesn't work for another business because that owner was doing things quote unquote unethically. And maybe they were, maybe they weren't.
Yep.
And that's why they can't go work for somebody else, because they can only trust themselves to run a good, true business that doesn't price gouge, overcharge the customer, do all these things. And so they're like, only I can do this in the way that is true and honest and good.
Okay. That's why you need to know your numbers.
True. Yeah. 100%.
So that you know you're not price gouging.
Yes. That is
So
again, like if you don't know your numbers, then you're in the unoffensive category of you're ignorant.
Yeah.
And if you know your numbers, then you can feel good about doing what you're doing, because now you are very well educated that I'm actually not ripping you off.
If you get
this is actually what I have to do.
Yeah. If you get to the end of the year and you're like, man, I only made $40K, I'm going to have to raise my prices. I think I can raise them $2 an hour, and that should make me a little bit more money. That's no good. You don't know your pricing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Especially if
need
you
to
get
do
to the end
better
of the
than
year. Yeah.
That's how most business owners live.
Yeah.
They have no idea how to set up their pricing.
Mm-hmm.
It's craziness. Okay, we hashed that out way too hard. Okay. We have an understanding of why we don't go, here's my materials and here's my labor.
Yeah, it's much
You
more
lump it
complex.
all into one sum. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you say, okay, this is what I'm going to do for you.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the price of it. Yay or nay?
Yeah.
Okay. Some customers will think that's not transparent. Some business owners probably still think that way. Some of you listening to this podcast are probably saying, that's just ripping people off. You're wrong. Hands down. I'll argue it till the day I die.
You will.
Okay. And in fact, I think you think I'm wrong, but I know you're wrong. So whatever.
Unless you don't want to make money in your business.
Unless you don't want to make money, you always want to struggle. You don't want to run a real business. You want to have a hard time hiring good guys. You don't want to pay your employees well. You don't want to provide for you and your family. Yeah, then keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But if you want to actually like contribute to the world and to society, then you need to charge what you're worth.
Yeah.
So that you have the funds to be able to build a good business that supports families, that contributes to society, that does a good job.
Yeah, it's also really, this is the last point I'll make on this, but it's also interesting because it's like the same people who would sort of run their business in this way probably really enjoy certain things like sports.
Yeah.
Like high level athleticism, like football.
Yeah.
But that is like not valuable to society whatsoever, in the sense that I don't call an NFL person to come fix a terrible problem in my house.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to pay that person an insane amount of money to go and perform for me.
Right.
But I won't run my business in such a way that I can actually make real change in my community by employing people I know and all these things.
The same person is willing to go buy the $300 Jordans or whatever they are.
Yeah.
But then they don't understand their own value.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a discrepancy in there, which makes it hard to like really walk out in
The
consistency.
same, and they're going to go to Starbucks and get the $400 an hour cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And they're fine with that.
Yeah.
But they won't do the same thing for their plumbing business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the more you know, the more you know.
They're going to go get their $300 an hour Taco Bell taco.
Yeah.
But they won't charge the same for their plumbing business.
Yeah.
So the teenage kid behind the counter making the taco, you're willing to pay him $300 an hour. But for your own plumbing business, where you have years of knowledge, usually some licensing and expertise, and it's a dying trade, and you're irreplaceable in this today's economy,
And you probably do a super good job,
and you do a
deeply
much better
care.
job than the dumbhead with zits on his face behind the counter at Taco Bell.
Hey, this might not be his
Yeah,
fault.
you won't even charge as much as Taco Bell or Starbucks does, right? Doesn't make any sense. Okay, so on the other half of this equation, we understand how to find our labor. We understand we got to lump labor and materials together. You also need to be willing to mark up your materials, not because you're trying to rip the customer off, but because you want to run a good business. So, and the easiest way for me to explain this, and if you're going to do, like if you want to go watch the margin pricing video, which I recommend that you do, this is material markup is totally different because you have to. Okay. So for a plumbing business that prices the way that we just said to price, okay, there's a few things when you go to mark up your materials. The reality is the conclusion I've come to is that if you don't mark up your materials, you are going to lose money on your materials because of inefficiency.
Sure.
Okay. So if you have a business with people and you're doing service work, you are really inefficient with your materials to the tune of you probably only bill out about 60% of what you actually buy. Okay. So if you don't mark them up enough to make up for that, you will lose all of your profits and then some. Now, you can't mark up 40%. Like if you marked up, if you marked that up 100%, okay, and you were 60% efficient, I mean, you build out for 60% of the materials that you bought, then you would be charging 120% of the materials that you bought, which means you'd have 20% left over for profit. Okay?
Okay.
That's no good though. And the reason is some of those materials, you need to use those materials to help cover some of your overhead. It's just a reality. So the minimum, like we'll just leave it at that. That's one way to look at it. The minimum is 120% because that leaves you a 20% profit.
Sure.
Just to adjust for efficiency on materials. Okay?
Yeah. And these are from like the numbers that you notice in your business?
Yes. And this is part of the reason I switched to margin pricing.
Sure.
Just a little bit ago.
Yeah.
The other reason is if you're looking at your P&L, okay, and this kind of has to do with margin, but you have top line revenue.
All the sales that you bring in.
Then you're going to take out your COGS. Part of your COGS. COGS stands for cost of goods sold. Part of your COGS is just materials. Then you have your gross profit, which is total revenue minus COGS. So if you had $1 million in revenue and your COGS were 500,000, you'd have 500,000 gross profit, which would be 50% of $1 million. So you would have a 50% gross profit. Okay. We need, every plumbing business out here needs minimum, absolute bare minimum, 50% gross profit to be profitable. Because your overhead is going to take up about 30 and you're going to have 20 left over for net profit.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Yeah.
Are you shooting for higher gross profit or
Me
lower?
personally?
Or just like in general? Because it's like, for some reason I have a really hard time conceptualizing in my head, like 50% gross profit gives you 30% overhead, 20% net, right?
Yep.
If I did 55% gross profit, then
you have
I would have
5% buffer. That's what I would.
So I'd have 5% buffer, which means
It's either going to get taken up in your overhead because you spent more on overhead than you thought, or it's going to go to your bottom line on net.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know why this is so hard for me because I feel like if I go to 55%, then I only have 45% left to play with.
Nope. You have 55%
How do I have 55% left to play with?
because you have 55% of 100 left over.
If I go to
If you did $1 million in revenue,
okay, gotcha.
and you had 45% COGS, you'd
Okay.
be left with 550,000, right?
yeah, okay,
Or
45%.
55% left
Okay,
over.
so you're saying 45% gross profit means I have
55%
left
total revenue
over.
left over.
I think I keep hearing it in the other way where it's like
Yep.
if I have 55% gross profit, that means I have 45% left over.
No, you have 55% left over.
Yeah,
you
'cause
already
it's-
used up the 45 in your COGS.
Okay.
Yep. It all has to add up to 100.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
The higher gross profit, the better.
Correct.
Okay.
Because you have more money left over,
Yeah. Okay.
right? It's profit. It's money you have left over.
Okay. So when you say
Okay.
55% gross profit, that's money you have left over.
Correct.
Okay. If I said, "Hey man, I hit 45% gross profit," you'd be like,
That'd be
"Ooh,
bad.
That's not good."
Yeah.
You're gonna lose that probably out of your net, but maybe it's your overhead that's sucking it up.
So if you have 45% gross profit, 30% of that's going to go to overhead. What's your net going to be?
Because I got 55% left over.
No, you had 45% left over.
Okay, so
You
I
have
got 45%.
gross profit.
Yeah, and I have 10% left over in my net.
15.
15. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that
Sorry.
was easy math.
I
too,
know,
dude.
but I was thinking of a bunch of
Okay.
stuff at the same time.
We'll give it to you.
That's my excuse.
Okay.
You don't have to give it to me. Just tell me to get better.
Okay. Cool. So if you, in reality, I want to shoot, like we try to shoot for a 55.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that means you got 55% to split between overhead and profit.
I know if we can hit 55% gross, we'll hit 22, 23-ish net.
Yeah, and that's because your overhead's pretty consistent. So
Our
you
overhead
know,
is
like,
low. My
Yeah.
overhead's really low.
it's low and consistent. So that you know that
Yes.
like, oh, well, if we hit this, we always know overhead's about here because it's pretty predictable, yeah?
It's 100% predictable.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. Take your expenses, put them in the calculator. You
True.
got overhead.
True, it is very
Yeah.
predictable.
Overhead is all your expenses
Yeah.
minus your labor and your materials.
Yeah.
That's it.
Probably is it the most predictable part about your business?
Yeah, it's pretty predictable.
Yeah.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
only thing in there that could really shift would be like marketing costs, right? And then you would factor them in, of course, so that you understood them.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're shooting for 50% gross profit.
Okay.
Bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which means on our labor and our materials, we need to hit 50% gross profit
Mm-hmm. Sure. They have to add to get to 50%.
on either of them.
Yeah.
Like if we hit 50% on our labor, but we only hit 30% on our materials, that's going to affect our total gross profit. It's going to bring it down. That
sure.
20% is going to offset part of the 50% you got out of your labor. Right?
Sure. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. So knowing that we want to hit 50% gross on our P&L, and that really we should add a 5% buffer in there to hit 55%. If we mark our materials up 120%, that is a 55% profit margin. It's actually 54.5. It's really close, right? So you literally have to mark your materials up 120%.
Yeah.
There's a gazillion and one ways to think about it. 120% is bare minimum. I used to say 100% until I understood this.
Gotcha.
And until I understood the waste that goes on in your business, okay? So you absolutely 100% have to mark them up 120%. Trust me. Hands down.
Yeah, it's not just for funsies.
No. And in fact, on your smaller materials, so like in Service Titan, we just set this up. We used to just mark everything up 120% across the board. Now on our low dollar materials, we mark them up 300% because that's where most of our waste comes from. It comes from the $10, $15, $20 materials. So I think anything $50 and under, it's a 300% markup across the board, no matter what. Because those are the things that we're inefficient on. So a $50 material, we're charging $150 for it. Some people think that's a ripoff, but that's how you protect your margins on your business.
Yeah.
That's how you run a good business. Okay. Now imagine you tell your customer, my labor costs me $35 an hour and this material is $20, but we're charging you $60 for the material and we charge you $400 for the labor. What's that customer going to think?
They think you're crazy.
They're going to think you're crazy. They're going to equate the price that you told them with the hourly wage that you're making, and they're going to think it's nuts.
And they're going to conceptualize what they think your business is like. So they're going to say like,
and
so I'm paying you this much for your guy to drive to Home Depot where I can drive to. How much gas does it take to get there? Like they're going to do a bunch of like things with just their understanding of your business, which they don't know.
And the reality is they have no idea.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. If instead you say, hey, I can fix your sump pump. I have one in the van, or I got to go run and get one and I'll be right back. We'll get it done today. I'll drain down your lift station. I'll fix your pump. We'll tie it back in. We'll wire it up. We'll make sure it runs. We'll do a test on it. Make sure all your alarms go off and everything. We'll run a bunch of water. Make sure you're still draining. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars. Now, instead of relating the money to the hours that they're paying they relate it to what they're getting for the money, which is really the fairer comparison for the customer and
because that's
for the business owner.
I mean, you're just telling them here is what we're going to do for you to get the expected / desired result.
Correct. 100%.
Which as a customer, that's really all you want to know.
Yep.
Is this going to work? And for how long is this going to work? Am I going to have to call you again? Am I going to have to deal with this anytime soon?
Yep.
Are you going to do anything so I don't have to deal with this anytime soon?
Think about it this way. When I first switched over to flat rate pricing, meaning giving the price, the total price for the job up front, getting the okay on the price, and then doing the work and collecting the money. I went to a guy's house for a water heater, electric water heater. Needed to be replaced. It was leaking. It was burst. I gave him the price. He said, sweet, go for it. I went and grabbed the water heater, came out, swapped it out, got her done, filled back up, complete, did some extra work for him. The next day he called me and he goes, man, how much do you charge an hour? I said, I don't price by the hour, I price by the job. So that's why I gave you a price up front. And he goes, well, I feel like I paid too much. And I said, well, why do you feel like that? He said, well, my bill was like $2,800 and you were here for like 2 hours. And I said, look, I've been doing this for 18 years. I've swapped out thousands of water heaters. I'm really fast and efficient at it. Would you have felt better if I sent an apprentice out to your house and it took him 8 hours to do the same work that I was able to do in 2? Would that be acceptable to you? And he goes, well, I mean, I guess it was nice that you were here for 2 hours. I said, exactly. You're not just paying me for my time.
Yeah.
The job is worth a certain amount.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who does it or how long it takes me. That's how much you pay. That's a better way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Think about it from, if you had an hourly rate, why would you want qualified and competent guys?
Yeah. Yeah. Because then they're just going to do it too fast. You're not
That would
gonna make any money.
incentivize the business owner to have you want your guys to take more time.
Yeah.
I'm going to get lower quality guys that are just really nice dudes, but they suck at plumbing. They
Good
just,
talkers.
they're good plumbers, but
Yeah.
they just take forever.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell them to slow down. This was actually my last boss. When I showed up, they didn't have any ProPress. And I was like, where's all your guys' ProPress stuff? He's like, oh, we don't do ProPress. And I said, why not? And he goes, well, it's too fast. We won't make any money. We
Interesting.
want you to take the time to solder. And I was like, interesting.
Were
So
you stoked about that, or were you like,
No, I was
"Oh,
pissed.
Gosh, not gonna frickin' solder."
There's not like a good plumber. There's nothing that will frustrate him more than the business slowing him down.
Yeah.
He has spent time and years
Yeah. Honing his craft,
honing
becoming
his
efficient,
craft to be able to
everything
get
is
in there
just-
and
yeah.
get out as efficiently and seamlessly as possible.
And then when the business owner's like, I need you to just be intentionally slower.
Here's all these old crappy tools. Here's these old junky parts. You can't keep anything in your van. You have to go get all the materials you need when you need them. And you have to take as long as possible on the jobs so that we can make as much money as we can. To me, that's not fair to the customer. It's not fair to the plumber. And it's not fair to the business owner either.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a crappy way to do business. But that's the way that most people do business. That's the way they operate.
It's so funny because like any other business, like, you know, you brought up Taco Bell or Starbucks, like it's not a time and materials business for a reason,
Yeah.
because it wouldn't make sense to the customer
No.
and it wouldn't incentivize the right things.
No, it would incentivize them to take forever to make your taco.
Yeah, which would
And
piss
then-
you off as a customer.
Yeah, which would piss you off as a customer because you want your taco now.
And the taco,
right?
well, anyways.
It's the same thing with your plumbing customers. They want the water heater now.
Yeah.
They don't want you to have. They don't want 2 guys at their house 2 days from now for 8 hours installing a water heater. They want it now, done in 2 hours, pronto, all ProPressed, in and out of there. That's what they want. At the end of the day, the bill could be the same. They're going to be happier with the guy who was there for 2 hours.
It's kind of funny because like the whole ProPress exists because there is a market of plumbing business companies who are like, hey, we're good with being more efficient. And so that whole idea exists because there's like, I guess what I'm getting at is there's like higher level business thinking that's happening where ProPress came from. It was like plumbers
True.
being like, man, if we could do this faster, this would be a lot better.
True.
And there's nobody being like, no. Let's make it slower so we can make more money. Like there's business owners who are already like, no, if we're more efficient because we're not doing time and materials, this will actually benefit us.
Yeah.
So thank you for this awesome product, high level business.
So for the people who are flat rate and they get ProPress, now they can do water heaters quicker, which drives prices down, which means they have a competitive advantage on price because of their efficiency over their competition,
Sure.
right? Versus trying to just do things cheaper. They actually found a way to make margins still, be more efficient, and do them cheaper. That I'm okay with. If you want to compete on price, that's how you do it.
Yeah. Not just by dropping it.
Not by dropping price arbitrarily to be cheaper than everybody
Yeah.
else. That
Well,
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Why do you think your competition has that price?
they,
I mean, most of the time it's because they have no idea what they're doing either and they pulled a number out their butt. But if you look at like the big companies in your area and they're charging, $3,800 to $7,000 for an electric water heater in a garage, in and out in a couple hours, there's a reason they're charging that.
Yeah.
Because they have to make money. And it's not because they have massive amounts of overhead.
Yeah.
They can actually probably offer it cheaper than a lot of the smaller companies. The smaller companies are the ones that are screwing themselves over by not charging what the big companies are charging.
Yeah.
It's craziness.
Yeah, it just comes from not knowing.
Yeah. Okay. Lastly, now we know we got to provide it all one lump sum. We got to mark up our materials. We got to charge a lot for our labor. Now, when we go to present it to the customer, it's no big deal for like owner to go out and say, okay, this is going to take me X amount of hours and materials are going to cost this much. So the job is going to cost this much, right? When you can start out that way, but like when you go and do that, you need to think about, you're trying to sell as much time as possible. Okay. The customer has to pay for everything. So the drive time it took you to get to their house needs to get paid for. The time you spent talking to the homeowner needs to get paid for. The time you spend going to get the new water heater has to get paid for. The time spent driving back to the customer's house has to get paid for. The time you spend billing the customer, the time you spend cleaning up your mess, the time you spend putting your van back together and putting all your tools away, all that has to get paid for. So when you're building your pricing, you need to think about all that stuff and include it in the price of doing the job. Okay. Otherwise, you're not going to bill out enough of your time to cover your expenses. Okay. Your efficiency is going to go down, your job time efficiency. Because the reality is, like, a water heater, as simple as it sounds, yeah, maybe you can go in a garage and change it out in an hour. The reality is, by the time you take that call and you go to the customer's house and then you look at what they got going on and you provide them with upfront estimates, and then you run to the store to get the water heater, and then you come back and you swap out the water heater and you fill it and you test it and you make sure it gets hot and you burp all the air out of their water lines, you write up the invoice, you bill the customer, you completely clean out your van. That's really a 5-hour job. And nobody can tell me otherwise because I've tracked it for the last 3 years, and it's a 5-hour job, like, on average.
And it's not like your technicians suck.
No, my technicians are awesome. Most of them are awesome. No, they're all awesome.
Shots fired.
So there's that. Okay. When you're yourself, you can do that. You can say, okay, this is a 5-hour, this is going to take me 5 hours and it's this much materials. So here's the math. Here's how much it should cost. Go present it to the customer. You can do it on a notebook. We did this to, like, we probably did $2 million in revenue, giving prices on notebooks. Okay. So you don't need a fancy software and that kind of jazz to get started with this. When you start getting guys in the field, you have to put those tools in their hands. So you have to get on some sort of software, and you need to build out a price book for them to use. Okay. Everybody gets, like, caught up on the price book.
Yeah, it's a
They
shiny,
start a business
it's a really
and they're
cool,
like,
shiny object.
I need a price book.
I think it's
And
just
it's
because
like-
guys don't know what to actually work on,
Yeah.
like, in their business. And so when a price book sounds cool because it's something to work on, even though it's, like, pretty much given to you.
Just work on making money.
Yeah.
They think the price book is what's going to make them the money, but the reality is, like, my price book, we've had it for a long, long time. We put a lot of work into it, and it's not the thing that makes us money. It's helpful in certain circumstances, right? But the reality is, like, most of the time, we have a custom task section where my guys can go select how long it's going to take, how much the materials are going to cost, and it poops out a price for them.
Yeah.
They use that probably 70% of the time.
Interesting.
Right?
I didn't know that.
Because there's more nuances.
Yeah, sure. Every job's going to have little nuances.
Every job is different. You're rarely going in and just doing something generic.
Yeah, like, holy crap, it's just exactly how it is in the price book.
You can build a water heater task. But, like, if the customer needs a water heater and they need a new well pump and they need a pressure tank and they want their faucet changed out, my guys are going to lump that all into one custom task because when we do that, we gain efficiency and we can drive the cost down for the customer. And if we just went by the price book tasks,
2 hours for this, 2 hours for this,
we can't adjust for that. So price book, yes, build one. Take 1,000,000 years and think really hard on it and go buy one and pay monthly for it? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Do you need it to grow to millions of dollars? No. At some point in time, probably around, 3 guys, when you pull out of the truck, get on some software, take the time to build out a price book, and then you'll be good.
Yeah.
Build out custom tasks.
Yeah, I've definitely talked to a lot of guys who are like just themselves working on their price book.
Yeah, for no reason.
Yeah, because it's like...
Just go to the house, be like, this is going to take me this long.
Yeah, you know the math.
Materials are going to cost me this long. Do the math, present the price on a notebook, and do the work and collect the money.
I think the price, and I think maybe there's a misunderstanding of like when a guy who's a technician for a good company goes and starts his own thing, he's like, we had this dope price book. That's really how that company made money.
Yeah.
And the assumption is that when you're working for somebody, you really know how this company makes money.
Right.
Which you don't. Like you don't you don't have any of the visibility on any of the stuff.
You don't even know if they made money.
No, unless you're like seeing a consistent P&L and having a conversation with the business owner about the details of all the stuff.
Yeah.
Then you might know.
Yeah. Like even for, this is actually a good point. We'll end on this because we've been talking about pricing. For copying pricing, if you go and you see a $20 million business and they're doing 5% profit and you go copy their prices and you do 500,000 in business, you ain't making any money, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So like when you go copy pricing, you have no idea what their margins are.
No.
They could be doing 20 million a year at 5% profit. They have a big chunk of money left over. What is that? What would 10% on 20 million? That'd be 2 million. So they'd be making $1 million a year. Now I would argue they should be able to do 5 million a year in revenue and $1 million in profit. And if they're doing 20 million, they should be doing 4 million in profit at least or better. And so if you copy their prices, you're underpriced.
Yeah.
And if you go do 500,000 at 5% profit, you only made $25,000 that year.
Gosh.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
When you could make 100,000, right? If you were priced right.
Yeah.
Big difference. $75,000 is going to be a lot easier to grow your business when you have an extra $75K sitting in the bank after you paid yourself. That's going to be much better. Anyway, don't copy. Do the math. Click the link in our bio, grab our playbook, get our calculator. If you're listening, go to wealthyplumber.com/playbook, read the playbook, do the calculator, watch the video, put in the hard work to actually grow your business. Don't be one of those lazy bums who like skips steps, doesn't think about what they're doing, doesn't like want to watch a 45-minute video because it's hard, and they don't want to take the time to understand this calculator because it's hard.
Or they got to go do more jobs, and that makes them real money.
Yeah.
Calculator doesn't really, it's just in the...
Don't be that guy. If you're in business, be in it and do it well. Don't half-ass it.
Yeah, really hone your task, thinking about your business and practicing the business skills.
Half-assing stuff is gross.
True.
It's disgusting, and you should be disgusted with yourself if you're half-assing it. You really should be. Like, don't half-ass anything. Like, do it with your whole heart. There's a book called Halfway Herbert. If you're a half-asser, go read it. It's a kid's book. It'll take you like 5 minutes to read.
Is it a board book? I only read board books.
A board? What's a board book?
They're the thick cardboard books. Big, thick pages for like toddlers to chew on.
It's like I don't know, maybe you're 5, 6, 7 years old. I used to read it to my son all the time. Halfway Herbert, like he did everything halfway. It was a good book. It was written by, I think it's by Francis Chan. Yeah, have you read it?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's Halfway Herbert by Francis.
I feel like I can almost see the cover in my head though.
If you got kids, read it to them every day so they don't do stuff half-ass. Yeah. Okay, rant over.
Cool. Thanks, Jared.
See you, Holmes.
See ya.